Hey everyone. Today I have an incredibly intriguing and mind-blowing story to share with you. It's about a woman who actually communicated with a Bigfoot. And even managed to capture a clear, strange piece of footage where the creature can be seen shouting actual words. There's a term called samurai chatter. You can look it up on Google. It's used by the BFRO, the Bigfoot Field Researchers Organization. Basically, it describes these unusual speech-like sounds, recorded deep within the forests. They're not typical animal noises, but they're not quite human either. The sounds are rough, rapid, and deep, almost like someone trying to speak a language we don't understand. And here's where it gets really wild. In her footage, you can hear Bigfoot yelling words that sound exactly like that samurai chatter people have discussed for years. I don't know if the footage or the story is entirely real, but later she did some research and believes she deciphered what those words actually mean. What she discovered is truly mind-blowing. Before we dive in, please remember to like and subscribe. It really helps the channel and keeps these stories coming. Alright, let's get started. Many think the most unbelievable part of my story is that I have Bigfoot on video. Not a blurry shape or a shadow, but a clear 10-second clip. In it, you see him step out of the trees, scare off 2 mountain lions, and shout something that sounds like a word. But that's not what truly messes me up. The real thing that haunts me is my son's knock on the door at 3:02 in the morning. 3 gentle taps, and I had this strange feeling before I even opened it, that something was standing behind him on the porch, something that had no reason to be gentle. My son was 10, smiling. I live in Washington State, back then, near the Cascades. You know the place. You pass the last decent diner, the last strip mall, and then the trees close in. You lose cell service, the road narrows. That's where my life was in 2014. My name is Sarah. I was 32 then, divorced, working at a small gas station along a rural route, raising my kid in a tiny rented cabin on a gravel road. Now I'm older, and I'm sharing this because I'm tired of carrying it alone. I won't give you exact coordinates. I know what people think when they hear Bigfoot. I'd think the same if I were in your shoes. But those 3 days when my son was missing, they were real. The search parties, the dogs, the ranger, the sick feeling in my chest, all real. The broken door, the basket of fruit, the shaky 10-second video I still have on an old phone where he shouts, "Wani Kuraha," so loud that the microphone crackles. That's real too. You can believe whatever you want. I just need to say it. My life before this was simple. Not in a bad way, just ordinary. The station I worked at had flickering fluorescents, humming coolers, and coffee that tasted burnt by 10 a.m. locals used it as a community hub. Old loggers, hunters, truckers passing through. My cabin sat back off the gravel road surrounded by firs and cedars. There was just one other house down the road, an older couple who went south for the winter. Otherwise, just trees and the sound of rain on the roof. I told myself I liked the quiet. After the divorce, the silence felt like proof that I'd gotten my kid away from shouting and slammed doors. Denny was 10 that September. Skinny, full of questions, a real talker. He would sit and watch cartoons or nature shows, then corner me in the kitchen to repeat every fact he'd learned. Because of my schedule, he spent many afternoons home alone. I'd see him off to school, work the day shift, and most days I'd be home by 5. But there were gaps. He'd come in, drop his backpack, make a sandwich, and pass the time with homework and TV until I got back. I told myself we were out of town, so it was safer. Fewer people, no bad influences. Now that sounds stupid when I say it aloud. It all started on just another afternoon. I came home tired, smelling of coffee and gasoline. The sky was that dull gray we get here, where it's impossible to tell if it's raining or just thinking about it. I opened the door and found him in the entryway, jittery. Mom, you're not going to believe what I saw," he said. That wasn't unusual. Usually it was about a kid at school or a cartoon. I brushed past him, kicked off my shoes, set my bag down. "What, buddy?" I asked, already thinking about what we had in the fridge. He said, dead serious, "I saw Bigfoot. Eyes wide, voice steady." I laughed. Not mean, just tired. "Yeah, we're by the trees near the stump," he continued. He was just standing there. I figured he'd been watching those shows again. The ones where grown men run around in the dark with night vision and never find anything. I told him it was probably a bear as I headed into the kitchen. Bears stand up sometimes. "No," he said, following me. "It wasn't a bear. Bears have a snout and walk on all fours. This was taller than the porch roof. It had shoulders and was just looking at me." He looked at me with that earnest, frustrated expression kids get when they're telling the truth and nobody believes them. Red in the face, not smiling, not playing. I didn't really take it in. I told him, "Okay, if you see anything weird again, come inside and lock the door. You know the rules." He hesitated, as if he wanted to say more, then shut down. That was mistake number one. Over the next few days, small things began to add up. The metal trash can out back, which raccoons sometimes knocked over, was now different. One morning I found the lid placed neatly on the ground beside it. Not tossed, but carefully set. The bag inside was torn at the top, as if something tall reached in. The rim had a new dent near the top. I told myself, maybe a bear got smarter. Maybe it figured out the lid. I even said it aloud, pretending that giving it a name made it normal. That same week, Denny started mentioning knocking. I'd hear it on the way to school. Last night, 3 knocks on the wall behind the couch, like this, he'd demonstrate. 3 evenly spaced taps with his knuckles. Houses make noise, I'd say. Wood expands, wind shakes branches. He'd glare, cross his arms, and stare out the window for the rest of the drive. Then one night, after he was asleep, I heard it myself. I was in the kitchen rinsing plates, the TV off, no music, just the fridge humming. 3 knocks on the back wall. Not a creak, not pipes. Knocks. My body reacted before my brain caught up. Shoulders tight, heart pounding. I set the plate down slowly, wiped my hands, and listened. Silence. I checked the back door, flipped on the porch light. The yellow glow illuminated rain, the railing, the edge of the trees. For a second I thought I saw something move, but it was probably just a branch. That's when I smelled it. Wet dog and dirt, but heavier. A musky, wild animal scent. Not garbage, not skunk, just something wild. The smell came and went quickly, like the wind shifting. I locked the deadbolt, double-checked the window latch, then went to bed with my heart still racing. I didn't tell Denny about the knocks or the smell. I didn't want to feed his Bigfoot stories. I also didn't sleep much that night. About a week later, I got scheduled for a night shift. A coworker called in sick, and my boss asked if I could cover. Rent doesn't care if you're tired, so I said yes. I made Denny mac and cheese, left it on the stove, and went over the rules again. Lock the door, don't open it for anyone. Call the station if anything weird happens. He rolled his eyes. I know, Mom. Driving down the gravel, I felt that familiar knot in my stomach. Every time I left him alone out there, it felt like I was peeling myself away from something important. The shift was dull. Just a few customers, a couple of regulars. Around 10, a forest ranger came in for coffee. Older guy, gray beard, steady eyes. I thought about telling him about the knocks, the trash can, the smell, but I'd already called him out once in the fall for raccoons, and I didn't want him to think I was the woman with stories. So I kept quiet, wiped the counter, and counted the drawer. I got home around 2 a.m. The first thing I saw when I pulled into the driveway was that the porch light was off. I always left it on for him. Always. My stomach clenched. I parked close to the steps, left the engine running. The trees seemed to lean in. The door was shut. When I reached for the doorknob, my hand shook. It was locked. I fumbled with the key, finally got it open, and flicked on the light. Denny was asleep on the couch. TV still on a kid's channel, volume low, blanket halfway on the floor. My knees nearly buckled. I just stood there a moment, looking at him, letting my body catch up. Relief made me feel sick. The next morning, once I'd calmed down, I asked him why he turned off the porch light. He frowned. I didn't. It just went out. Bulbs burn out, I started, but he cut me off. Right after the knocks, he said. 3 on the back wall, then 3 on the front, and I heard breathing. He pointed outside the window, saying softly, "Like this." He took a slow, deliberate inhale and exhale. It seemed like he was trying to check on us. "Who?" I asked, even though I knew the answer. "Bigfoot," he replied matter-of-factly, as if it were obvious. "The same one." I snapped at him then, telling him to stop mentioning that, insisting it was just animals in his imagination. He shut down, walking away in silence. That night I left the porch light on and double-checked it 3 times before bed. It was still glowing when morning came. A few days later I noticed footprints, though I wasn't looking for them. I was just dragging the trash can back after pickup on the damp, muddy ground beside the cabin. There, near the corner, were 2 large impressions. Not vague dips, but clear footprints. They showed toes, 5 of them, and were longer than my boot by about a third. The mud around them was pushed outward, as if something heavy had stepped there. The stride between the prints was wide, farther than I could comfortably step. I stood there, one hand on the trash can, staring. Human? No. Barefoot? Not in that cold. Bears? No. Bears don't leave footprints like that, especially not in a straight 2-footed line so close to the house. I thought about grabbing my phone to take a picture. My hand even reached for my pocket. But then a stupid voice in my head said, "If you take a picture, then it's real." I hesitated. That might have been one of my dumbest decisions, but at the time it felt safer not to push. Like not pressing on a bruise. That night, Denny woke me again. He was standing in the doorway, silhouette outlined by the hall light. "He's outside," he whispered. I heard him, but almost told him to go back to bed. Something in his voice held me back. We moved to the living room. I turned off the TV and the cabin sank into that thick, heavy quiet. So deep that every tiny sound felt loud. We waited. Then, beyond the yard, from somewhere among the trees came a long, low sound. Not a coyote, owl, or any animal I recognized. It started deep, rose slightly, then suddenly cut off. My body stiffened. The hair on my arm stood up. I knew, instinctively, that it was wrong before my mind caught up. Denny squeezed my hand. "That's him," he whispered. "Go to your room," I said. "No," he replied firmly. "Now," I insisted, glancing back at the window. Then came 3 knocks on the wall. I instinctively grabbed my gun, more out of habit than confidence. I hated that thing. It made me feel both small and powerful at once, and I didn't like either feeling. I moved to the back door, flicked on the light, and yanked it open. Rain, trees, the shed, nothing, just emptiness. But that feeling lingered, like someone had just stepped into the shadows out of sight. The next day, I called the ranger. He arrived in the afternoon, walking the property line with me, examining the ground for tracks. The muddy march where the footprints had been was partly washed away by rain. He was kind, explaining about bears, cougars, elk, animals that sometimes come close to homes, especially if food is left out. I told him about the knocking. He said wood shifts, old cabins creak, and sound carries strange, and I mentioned Bigfoot, almost as a joke, and I saw something flicker behind his eyes, a brief shudder. "We get those calls sometimes," he said. 9 times out of 10, it's a bear or someone drinking. Denny stood off to the side, listening silently. When the ranger left, he turned to me. "You don't believe me," he said. "I believe you're scared," I replied. "And I believe something's happening, but we can't jump to conclusions." He finished for me. "Bigfoot." I didn't reply. He went into his room and shut the door. That was the last normal day before he vanished. The day he disappeared was unpredictable. Morning rain, sunshine, clouds, typical September weather. I dropped him off at school, went to my shift, and listened to old men complain about gas prices. Nothing felt odd, but on the drive home, an oppressive weight settled over me, like I'd forgotten something vital but couldn't remember what. When I pulled into the driveway, I sensed something was wrong before I even reached the steps. It was silent. No TV, no video game noises. Inside, his backpack sat on the couch, shoes on the mat, a half-eaten apple browning on a plate. Denny was nowhere to be seen. I checked his room, then the bathroom, my own room, closet, beneath beds. Heart pounding out, I even looked into places I knew he couldn't fit. I ran outside, calling his name into the trees. No answer. The ground near the yard showed a few scuffs, perhaps where he'd been running, but I couldn't decipher them. After 10 minutes of frantic searching and shouting, I called 911. That day is a blur of flashes. Sheriff's car in the driveway, crackling radios, neighbors I barely knew asking what they could do. The ranger again, volunteers in orange vests, dogs sniffing the ground, calling his name. At first, everyone moved fast. Sharp questions, urgent searches. Had he run away? Did he have friends nearby? Was anyone likely to take him? I denied everything, telling them about the woods, the knocking, the strange sounds. I even mentioned Bigfoot, the word tasting ridiculous on my tongue. Some volunteers looked away when I said it. One even smiled knowingly as if to say, "You're one of those." By nightfall, they set up a base camp at the end of my driveway, flashlights scanning the dark, shadows flickering in the trees. The next day, they continued grid searching. No sign of him. No jacket, shoes, blood, or drag marks. By the second evening, the energy had shifted. People still searched, but the urgency waned. Sideways glances, quieter voices. Someone remarked, "Kids are resilient. Sometimes they hide when they're scared." Most volunteers left by the 3rd night. The sheriff promised patrols, and the ranger said he'd return in the morning. I was left alone in that empty room, my son's pillow still dented from his head. I lay awake, imagining every worst-case scenario. Around 3 a.m., sleep eluded me. Sitting on the edge of my bed, I heard the house so still I could hear the clock ticking. Then, 3 soft knocks on the front door. My entire body froze. Walking slowly down the hall, every step deliberate, I reached the living room. The lamp was dimly lit, casting just enough glow to see the door. "Who is it?" I called, my voice trembling. Silence. Then, unmistakably, right on the other side of the door, "Mom, it's me." I nearly dropped the door. "Denny," I whispered, voice trembling. "Please open the door," he begged. I fumbled with the lock, then pulled it open. Standing before me was my son. Muddy, clothes wrinkled, face thinner but not broken. He didn't look like someone who'd been alone in the woods for 3 days. He looked okay. Behind him, filling the doorway, was a tall, broad, dark shape. Something immense, shadowy, against the night. My mind didn't process it as Bigfoot. Instead, it screamed, "This is too big, you cannot understand this right now. Focus on your kid." I grabbed Denny by the shoulders, pulling him inside, stepping between him and whatever that creature was. Up close, I saw more hair, thick, brown, tangled with mud and sticks. The shoulders were wider than the doorframe. The porch light revealed part of its face and chest. Its eyes were dark, neither glowing nor flat, just focused and piercing. Not quite animal, not human, something in between. I raised the gun, trembling, unsure whether to shoot or run. I don't even remember drawing it, but somehow it ended up in my hand, aimed at his chest. "Get away from my house," I whispered, my voice sounding unnaturally thin. Behind me, Denny grabbed my arm urgently. "Mom, don't," he begged. "Don't hurt him. He's our uncle." The creature's mouth moved and it emitted a deep, brief sound. My entire body flinched. Suddenly, I fired the gun. The shot echoed through the small entryway, hitting me like a slap to the head. My ears rang as the bullet ricocheted into the porch roof. The creature jerked back, not from the impact, but as if startled. It grabbed the porch post once, then stepped backward into the darkness. In that fleeting moment, our eyes met. I swear there was no animal panic there, just confusion, maybe even pain. Then, it was gone, disappearing into the shadows, leaving only the trees behind. I slammed the door shut, locking both locks with trembling hands. Denny was hitting my arm, yelling, "Why did you do that?" I dropped the gun, pulling him close so hard he gasped for air. "Where were you? What happened?" I sobbed. The next words from him changed everything I thought I knew about those woods. We didn't sleep that night. We sat at the kitchen table wrapped in blankets, feeling too small and too big all at once. "Tell me everything," I said. "No jokes, no stories, just what really happened." He nodded seriously, hands flat on the table. He told me he'd seen a rabbit near the trees that afternoon. He followed it, thinking he'd be back quickly, but the trees swallowed the cabin faster than he expected. One moment he saw the roof, the next it was gone behind branches. He turned around, thought he was walking back, but everything looked wrong. Every tree was the same as the next. It got eerily silent. "Too quiet," he said. "I yelled for you, but you didn't answer." He admitted he started to cry, walking in circles until darkness fell. Then he heard something heavy moving. "Thumps, not a bear," he said. Something heavier, like the ground was vibrating. He froze, thinking it was a bear, but remembered not to run. Suddenly a figure stepped out from behind a tree. "Was it Uncle?" I asked. He nodded. He was taller than I remembered, closer. "I thought I'd pee my pants," he added. The creature looked at him, tilted its head as if listening. Then it reached out one large hand, palm up. Denny hesitated, then placed his hand in that huge palm. It was warm, more like human than animal, just bigger. That detail haunted me. Denny said the creature didn't pull him, just held his hand and walked with him through the trees, up hills, over rocks. Every stumble he made, the creature paused until he caught up. Eventually, they arrived at a dark cave opening. "A cave?" I asked. He nodded, took me inside. It was cold, but not like outside. Inside, there was a smaller one. He called her Auntie, shorter, with lighter hair around her face, who looked at him with a kind of cautious curiosity. There were ferns piled in one corner, like a bed, and a trickle of water along the wall. Uncle offered him berries, big ones, different from ours, and tried to give him raw fish, which Denny made a face at, almost gagging. He ate the berries instead. I asked if he was scared, and at first he said yes, but then he made low, talking sounds, and Auntie hummed. He felt okay there. He slept among them, woke up, ate more berries. Then he heard men, normal talking, guns. Uncle heard them too, went still, then stepped in front of the cave to block the entrance. Auntie pulled Denny back behind some rocks. I could hear the men walking past, cursing, discussing the tracks. One of them even said he saw a rifle barrel through a crack. They didn't enter. Uncle stayed very still, made a low sound. Hushed Denny when he started breathing fast. When they finally left, Uncle relaxed, made a longer sound to Auntie, who responded softly. Denny said, "It's like us, but not," describing how the creature talked a lot. On the third day, Denny told Uncle he wanted to go home. He said they communicated somehow, and Uncle made a sighing sound, then nodded, took Denny's hand, and led him out, different from the way they entered, to hide from the men. Denny recognized a fallen tree along the way, and finally saw the porch light, feeling safe. But then I shot. The guilt hit me hard. "I didn't hit him," I insisted. "I didn't." Denny said, "He knows too, but you scared him." Sitting there, he looked older, different in his eyes. He said Uncle helped him, that out there, someone was looking out for them, even if no one else believed it. The next morning, I lied to the sheriff, claiming Denny wandered farther than he thought, slept in an old deer blind, and found his way back. They closed the case, but it wasn't over. 2 days later, I couldn't leave Denny alone, so I took him to the station. When we returned that evening, I saw the front door was broken, frame cracked, lock splintered. My heart sank. I told Denny to stay in the car and ran to the porch. Up close, it looked like something had tried to force the door open. Hinges bent, screws loose. On the porch, there was a woven basket made of branches and bark, filled with berries, roots, and unfamiliar fruit. Denny was quiet behind me. "It's from him," he said. I looked at the damage, then at the basket. Maybe he was trying to say sorry, or maybe it was a warning. I didn't touch it at first, feeling it might be both. Over the next few days, small signs appeared. Stacked stones, a big feather on the porch rail, distant low whoops at night. I started searching online, trying to understand those sounds. Bigfoot language, samurai chatter. I listened to recordings from the 70s, strange speech-like sounds. Deep, quick, almost like someone speaking with marbles in their mouth. One phrase froze me. "Wania kuraha." I paused. Later, Denny came in while I was listening. Stopped dead. "That's him," he said. "That's Uncle." He was sure it was the same sounds he heard in the woods, after the cave when the men were near. People argued online about the meaning. Some said it was nonsense, others believed it was a real language. I kept coming back to those words, "I'm here, don't be afraid," wondering if that's what the creature had been trying to tell us all along. Then came the day I got the video. The weather was perfect. Clear sky, a rare crisp day. I felt restless, cabin fever setting in. While Denny was at school, I grabbed 2 empty jugs and decided to walk down to the creek. I had my phone in hand, checking messages, never putting it away. The forest was quiet, just the sound of my boots and the distant trickle of water. The air carried the scent of damp leaves and cold stone. I crouched on the rocks by the water's edge, filling the jugs. The water was so icy that my fingers went numb. That's when I felt it. Not a sound, but a subtle pressure at the back of my neck. The sensation that someone's eyes were on me. I straightened slowly, turning my head. Up on the bank, about 30 feet away, a mountain lion stood. Large, muscular, its color like dry grass, tail twitching, eyes fixed on me. My mouth went dry. I remembered bits of advice. Don't run. Make yourself look bigger. Talk loudly. I raised my arm slowly, still holding the phone. My thumb instinctively hit the screen, tapping the camera icon. "Hey," I said, my voice thin and shaky. "Go on. Get." The lion didn't move. Then, from the trees on my left, I heard another sound. Another lion stepping into view, lower and closer. 2 of them now. I knew, in that terrifying calm, that they were blocking my way home. I took a tiny step back, my boots slipping on the wet rocks, almost falling into the creek. Suddenly, a roar shattered the silence behind the lions. Not a lion's roar, but deeper, rougher. It hit me in the chest. Branches snapped. A trunk shook violently. Then, he stepped out. Bigfoot. The camera jerked wildly, but he was there. Standing tall among the trees, his massive, hair-covered chest and long arms visible, the outline of his head with a heavy brow catching the light. The lions didn't stay to see what he was. They bolted. He looked directly at me, took a breath, and I could see his chest expand. Then, he shouted, "Wani kuraha!" The sound struck the phone so forcefully that the microphone distorted, causing the speakers to buzz. I could hear my own breath hitch in the background. He didn't charge or rush, just stood there for a moment longer, chest rising and falling, eyes fixed somewhere near the camera. Then, he turned sideways, took a few heavy steps, and melted back into the trees. 10 seconds. That's all it took. but it was unmistakable. You could see him clearly. You could see the lions, and you could hear the word. When I watch it now, part of me still thinks it can't be real, but I remember the cold on my hands, the ache in my knees, the pounding of my heart drowning out the water. It was real. I walked back to the cabin in a daze. Once inside, with the door locked and curtains drawn, I sat at the table and played the clip again, turning the volume low just to listen to his voice. I compared it to the samurai chatter recordings I'd found online. The rhythm, the sounds, they matched. Wani, Kuru, Raha. I thought about Denny's words, how he said that's what he heard in the cave, and about the online comments. I'm here, don't be afraid. I couldn't be certain what it truly meant, but deep down, that's how it felt. He stepped between me and the two lions and shouted something that sounded a lot like, I'm here, don't be afraid. It tore me up inside. Now I had what many only dream of, a clear video proof, something destined to go viral instantly, to have networks and experts calling. And my first instinct was excitement, followed quickly by dread, because I knew what would happen if it got out. People with guns, traps, and the words like trophy and specimen. The same men Denny had heard in the woods. I put the phone down and doubled over, vomiting into the sink. After that, my perception of him changed. He wasn't just some mysterious figure in the trees anymore. He was on my phone, in my house, in my hand. I started treating the yard's edges like a border between two worlds, ours and theirs. Sometimes I leave a small bag of apples at the tree line, then step back and wait. Most times, nothing happened. But once I heard heavy footsteps and a low murmur, and when I checked later, the apples were gone. At night, while doing dishes, I'd sometimes feel eyes on me. I'd glance up and see only my reflection in the window. We had settled into a strange truce. Denny would stand at the edge of the grass, softly talking into the trees. How was your day, Uncle? He'd ask. School was dull. Math tests sucked. I'd watch from the porch with my heart pounding, torn between rushing to him or pulling away. I once asked if he thought he was answered. Not in words I understand, he said. But I know when he's there. I believed him. A few months later, as the days grew longer, Denny and I sat on the porch steps, not talking about any of this, just about school, work, bills. Then, unexpectedly, he said, Do you want to see where I was? Where you were in the cave? He added, with them. The idea of venturing that deep into the woods made my stomach twist. I'd even gone to the creek alone since the lion incident. We'll get lost, I said. And I'm not calling the sheriff again. We won't, he insisted. He'll take us. The way he said it made my skin crawl. The air shifted. I can't quite explain it, but I felt it, like someone walking behind you. We heard a low whoop. Denny stood up. Uncle, he said quietly. I should have said no. Should have grabbed him, locked the doors, and pretended none of this was real. Instead, I stood there. He stepped out from the trees as if he'd been there all along, calm, unhurried, just at the edge where grass meets woods. Up close, he was as big as I remembered, or maybe bigger. It's hard to tell with my pounding heart. He made a short, questioning sound. Denny stepped forward, reaching toward him. If he'd reached out, he could have touched his head, but he didn't. The creature looked over one shoulder at us, then started walking into the woods. Denny looked back at me. I followed behind him in a line. Him in front, me behind. Denny a little closer to me than to him. The trail was not a real path, more like a jumble of trees and fallen branches. Every time we reached a dip or obstacle, he found the easiest way through without hesitation. The light dimmed as we went, and the distant sounds of the road faded away. At one point, my foot slipped on moss. I grabbed his arm instinctively. His hair was coarse under my fingers, and the muscle beneath was solid, more so than any human's. He paused, looked at my hand, then at me. Sorry, I muttered, pulling back. He made a low, amused sound. We kept walking. After about 20 minutes, though it felt longer, the trees opened up, and I saw the rock face. The cave entrance was smaller than I'd imagined. A dark slit in the stone, surrounded by hanging ferns. The air smelled damp and old, wet rock and decayed leaves. Moving within the shadows was a shape. Auntie, shorter but still towering. Her hair lighter, especially around her face. Her eyes went first to Denny, then to me. I felt a strange urge to introduce myself. Hi, I'm Sarah, like some awkward family reunion. Instead, I just stood there, my heart pounding in my chest. Denny stepped inside a few steps and pointed. That's where I slept, he said. In a corner, a patch of flattened ferns. Along the wall near a trickling stream, I saw strange markings. Lines and circles drawn in what looked like mud. Symbols or maybe just doodles. Uncle watched me, neither blocking the entrance nor pushing me further in. I instinctively whispered, "I won't tell anyone where this is." He tilted his head slightly, as if he understood more than I wanted him to. He made a prolonged sound, then followed it with a series of those deep, syllabic calls. I didn't record it. I felt clumsy, and it just didn't seem right to pull out my phone in their home. Denny offered a small smile. He said it was safe. He told me that, but I think maybe he was just guessing. Maybe he wasn't. We didn't linger. Just a few minutes enough for me to see where my son had spent 3 nights while the world outside was in chaos. On the way back, the forest felt different, like we were walking through someone's house. When we reached the edge of our yard again, he stopped right where grass met leaf litter. He didn't step out. He looked at me, then at Denny, and made a gentle, soft sound. Then he turned and quietly disappeared back into the trees. That was the last time I saw him so close. Life didn't snap back to normal after that. It seemed to sag, bent around this secret we carried. We moved a couple of years later, closer to town, less forest, more people. I told myself it was for Denny's sake. Better schools, more opportunities, and that was true. But part of me also knew I needed distance. Living with 1 foot in that world and 1 in this one was exhausting. We kept the cabin for a while, then eventually let it go. I deleted the video from my main phone before we moved, transferred it to an old device, and turned off all the automatic backup features. No cloud, no email. That phone now sits in a drawer. Sometimes, when the house is quiet and everyone's asleep, I take it out, charge it, and watch that clip. I've only shown it to one person, someone I trust. They watched it 3 times, then looked at me and said, "If that's fake, it's the best I've ever seen. It's not fake." I've heard how people act when they're chasing something. I've heard men in the woods with guns talking excitedly about tracks going this way. If I put that clip online, the spot where he shouted those words would be crawling with drones and rifles within a week. They'd say it's for research, for science, for the good of humanity. But you know how stories like that end. So I keep it to myself. Maybe that makes me a coward. Maybe it makes me selfish. I don't know. All I know is that something out there helped my kid, hid him from the very men who would come for him if they saw what I recorded. He brought my son home. He protected me from 2 mountain lions when he didn't have to. He shouted something that sounds an awful lot like, "I'm here, don't be afraid," in his own way, for both of us. I owe him more than I owe anyone demanding proof. Denny's grown now, living his own life, dealing with his own problems, miles away from those woods. If you ask him about it, he'll shrug and change the subject. Most days, he acts as if it was just some strange childhood story he barely remembers. That's how he gets through it. But sometimes, if we're watching nature documentaries and a strange whoop echoes from the TV, he'll go very still. His eyes will flicker for a second toward the nearest window, and I know he remembers. As for me, there are still nights when I wake at 3 a.m. for no reason. I lie in the dark, listening to the hum of the fridge and the ticking clock, and then I hear it. 3 soft knocks on a door that no longer exists. I picture my kid on that porch, smiling, mud on his face, a massive shadow lurking behind him in the shadows. I see those eyes on the camera screen, looking past the glass, past the pixels, like he's staring straight back at me, not as prey, not as some monster in a movie, but like a neighbor at the edge of the light, whispering the only thing that truly matters in all this. "I'm here, don't be afraid."